Welcome to 5 Minute Bible, your daily guide for your daily reading. Today's January the 20th, and we'll be covering Genesis 25 through 26. Now, today's reading marks a generational turning point in the book of Genesis. Genesis 25 through 26 transitions the story from Abraham to Isaac, while also introducing the next major conflict in the promise, because Abraham dies, and Isaac takes center stage. And the question immediately becomes whether the promises that God made to Abraham are actually going to survive into the next generation. What we see here is deeply reassuring. God's covenant does not depend on the strength and wisdom and courage of a man, but on the faithfulness of God himself. Genesis 25 closes Abraham's life and introduces Jacob and Esau, twins whose rivalry begins almost immediately. Before either had done either good or bad, God declares that the older would serve the younger, overturning every natural assumption and expectation. Esau later proves how little he actually values the gift by trading his birthright in for an immediate relief, a bowl of soup. Genesis 26 then follows Isaac through a season of famine. Fear returns, and like his father, Isaac fails. He repeats Abraham's deception with his own wife. But yet, in the middle of Isaac's weakness, God appears, reaffirms the covenant, blesses him profoundly, and protects him from surrounding hostility. Now, as you read today, I want you to ask the following question. Does God's promises depend on human worthiness or upon divine election? And what does that even mean? Because Genesis 25 confronts us with a God who chooses freely and yet remains faithful. Even when his people repeat the same sins generation after generation after generation, the Lord is the same yesterday, today, and forever, and he's always faithful. Now, the central pattern in Genesis 25 through 26 is the persistence of God's promise, even in the midst of flawed families. Abraham dies. Isaac stumbles. Esau despises what he should have treasured. Jacob carries the promise forward, but through supplanting, lying, and conflict rather than virtue. And yet, astonishingly, God's plan advances without interruption. And this feels uncomfortably close to our real life experience. As parents, we're going to recognize and see our own fears resurface in our children. Families are going to see the same patterns reappearing generation after generation. The old sins are going to come wearing new faces. But Genesis shows us something essential. Covenant faithfulness does not evaporate when our obedience wavers. God doesn't abandon his purpose or his promise when his people grow weary, afraid, or even short-sighted. He remains steady even though we are not. Now, these chapters point us directly to Jesus Christ because Esau represents the tragedy of valuing immediate satisfaction over a lasting inheritance. But Jacob, though deeply flawed, carries the promise forward by grace. And Christ fulfills this pattern perfectly as the true heir, not chosen because of human strength or birth order, but because he is the Father's chosen son. And Isaac's preservation through the famine anticipates Christ as the true seed through whom blessing continues even in barren seasons. When Isaac repeats Abraham's failure, Christ succeeds where both had failed. In that way, Genesis 25 through 26 teaches us that salvation is not about moral superiority or perfection or even getting everything right, but it's about sovereign grace, a grace that is fully revealed to us in Jesus. Now, as you read Genesis 25 through 26 today, pay attention to how quietly the promise endures. One generation passes, another stumbles forward, and yet God never loosens his grip on the trajectory of history. Tomorrow, the focus is going to narrow even further as Jacob's life begins to unfold, revealing how God shapes his servant, not through ease, but through struggle. And with that, read your Bible carefully, joyfully, and devotionally. May the Lord use his word to sanctify you completely, and we will continue our journey tomorrow. God bless you.